Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and today we have the other co-host straight from Dangerous Tangents. It's Jarrod joining us. Welcome back, Jarrod.
Hey, Daniel. How's it going?
Pretty good. We're on sector number 499, almost at 500. Fucking insane. So I'm like, oh shit, we're here. I should probably
that's ridiculous.
do something crazy for this episode. The way we format the show is we go through a bunch of news. That's the general format. On the Brokehead end, I do want to give you a heads up. There's a slight delay between Jarrod and I, so there might be some overtalk here and there, but otherwise, it's not the first time we've had to deal with it and won't be the last. We'll still have a good show in front of you, lots of great news, but we are going to go through that first. Then we end it with the Brokehead block, which is what Jarrod and I have been doing throughout the week. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 499. So I don't know how you feel about Kevin Smith, Jarrod. I used to really, really like him, and that has changed throughout the years, but Dark Horse seems to like him quite a bit, and after publishing his prequel to Masters of the Universe, Dark Horse will be publishing a line of Kevin Smith comics named Secret Stash Press. So this line will launch in the autumn with Kevin Smith's Masquerade. It's an 8-issue masked Avenger superhero tale, followed by Quick Stops, which is an ongoing anthology set in the world of Kevin Smith's View Askew universe movies, including Clerks, Mallrats, Jay and Silent Bob. I don't know, do you feel the same way about Kevin Smith? Has he kind of changed throughout the years as far as some of the things you do and don't like and all the crazy things he kind of says?
I mean, I enjoy a lot of his movies, especially, the Clerks, Mallrats, Jay and Silent Bob, Dogma, like that kind of. I tried to watch the new He-Man that he worked on. It's just, he's got a little political with his stuff, and it's just not in a direction that I really care for. So, yeah, and then some of his comments online, like I said, I used to be a big fan of his, and now it's just kind of like, I'd prefer that he left some of that stuff out of his work.
I agree, and Masters of the Universe, I know that it's a collaboration of different writers, and some of his stuff goes in there. But as far as like his last line of movies, like I did enjoy Tusk, at least the first quarter of it, where it seemed like it was this deep down horror film, and then he kind of seems like he lost his nerve and decided to make it this comedy. Otherwise, yeah, I also liked Clerks. That's probably my favorite movie, Tusk. I didn't like Yoga Hosers, and I did enjoy his podcasts from time to time. But in this case, I don't know, like He-Man and Yoga Hosers, and between all the different stuff that's been going on, I do feel like maybe his best work is behind him. But you know what? He's making the films that he wants to make. He said that on his podcast pretty clearly, that he's no longer playing the studio game of trying to make the biggest box office ever. Instead, he's trying to say, you know what? I have never seen a movie like that. Let me go and make that. So I can at least respect that. But if this line of comics is anything like the Masters of the Universe show or even comic book, because I did read the prequel comic and it's definitely a Kevin Smith book. They put in sex jokes and there's a shit ton of dialogue in there. If it's anything like that, I'm not going to stay sub to it too quickly. And to be honest with you, the only one that kind of has my interest is Quick Stops.
Yeah, that one kind of seems a little interesting. It's one of those things where I'm not sure if I just like grew out of it or if he's changed, because it's been how many years now. But I'm glad he's getting to do his thing and that he, feels like his creative, aspects of his work are really what he wants to do, and, more power to him.
I do enjoy that Dark Horse is like, yeah, we're going all in on these. And me as an ex-retailer, I'm like, I don't know if these are honestly going to do too well. Like the last Masters of the Universe comic book that came out, I ordered heavy on it, and it didn't do as well as I wanted it to because it confused the shit out of me because people are constantly asking us for He-Man comic books. And the last time they did the Injustice He-Man crossover, I think there was even a He-Man miniseries. It did incredible. But for some reason, this last one, even before the Netflix show had officially debuted, it was still overall passed on by a lot of people. So I honestly don't know that Dark Horse will sell a lot of these. I do think that the Kevin Smith fan base, obviously, they are into comic books. I just don't know if they're actually going to come out and pre-order these things. They previously did the Yoga Hosers comic book, and I know I did not sell a lot of those. And I really don't know if this one's going to be a hit for him, but I do wish him luck.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like, it's funny though too, because like especially with the He-Man thing, like I feel like it's such a double-edged sword of trying to bring something back that fans of a thing are asking for, but if you don't do it exactly right, which you literally can't do for everybody, they shun it in a way like it's worse than if you just never made it and they just kept asking for it. You know what I mean? They don't even really remember exactly what it was that they had before because you've got that view from that nostalgia view instead of what it actually was.
We do have some news as well from the world of Halo. I am excited for this one. There was an interview with Toto Phil, and the executive producer Daryl Frank finally revealed just how attached to the show Steven Spielberg was. So that was a question that came up, I want to say a couple of weeks back on.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I wasn't honestly. I've been kind of following it. Like, I don't want to know too much about the Halo series because I am excited for it. But it's one of those where I'm not like on like, total media blackout. But I wasn't looking too deeply into it. But I mean, it's good to know that he had a hand in it pretty heavily. It seems like.
So the producer did say, quote, "We treated it as though it was a legacy project of Steven's. He godfathered it in terms of reading every script, helping choose showrunners, writers, directors, cast, production design, visual effects. Every aspect of it he looked at," end quote. Right now it's set to premiere on Paramount Plus on March 24th. Julian and I just did a Steven Spielberg retrospective of sorts by looking at Jurassic Park. And it seems like he does have his hands in a lot of these upcoming projects and sci-fi, especially when it comes to video games now is what he seems to be involved in. I think he was attached to Ready Player One, wasn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. He's been attached to a lot of things. He's really kind of getting back out there in more of that producer role, which is really kind of cool to see because I really enjoyed, I would say most of his movies that he was the director on.
I never got your take on this one, and I do want to hear it because you are also a big Microsoft Halo fan. And this is something that Bobby had a criticism of, and he's been talking about it on Discord, and it's kind of what I expected them to come out with. And this is the Master Chief. You see his face in the show is what they've already told us. He takes his helmet off, and that would explain why they went with an actor as opposed to the voice actor from the video game. So it's kind of confirmed all of that. You're not going to have the guy that voices Master Chief unless you have drastically like very, very similar voices, but you're not going to have him just dub the parts where he has his helmet on and then have a completely different actor, like pull a Star Wars with Darth Vader and have a different actor underneath. You want to have the same guy, kind of like they've done from what I hear on The Mandalorian. So how do you feel about that being the reason why we haven't gotten like the typical Master Chief voice, the iconic one, and instead they're going the route of what I think makes more sense of we need to cast an actor to play this, I'm assuming, lead role?
I mean, if they're gonna do it that way, that's fine. I'd honestly prefer no Master Chief face reveal. It's kind of been a thing throughout the entire games and the books. Like he's just kind of like this mysterious character. I feel like you could have done it though, because if you look at movies, especially or shows, even in, for instance, The Mandalorian, like when he takes his helmet off, he doesn't sound remotely the same because you've got that helmet kind of calm, voice to it. Like it clearly sounds like it's coming out of a speaker. So, I mean, you've got kind of a built-in excuse to use the same voice actor. I honestly just don't know if they could get him. I think that's more what happened. But yeah, it's one of those things like Master Chief's voice is kind of iconic. So I would have preferred to have the same voice actor. But, it's just one of those things. I mean, they also had a Chevy Tahoe in one of the shots. So, I mean, I'm excited for it, but I'm not expecting this to be perfect. Just like any kind of TV show adaptation of a video game, like it usually goes okay.
Well, I'm hoping for the best on it. I'm going to be checking it out again when it comes out on Blu-ray. Are you going to be subbing to this on Paramount Plus or kind of waiting and seeing?
We'll probably be subbing to it on Paramount Plus.
Nice.
I'll give it a shot. I will probably wait. I don't know if they've announced what the release schedule is, but if they're doing that like, one episode every Friday or something like that, I'm probably just going to wait for it all to come out so I can watch it all in kind of one one shot. But yeah, no, I'll sub. They're gonna get the money, and there's other stuff on there, I'm sure.
Yeah, with every streaming service, it seems like, especially since it disappears from Netflix or HBO Max or the others, it's like, all right, all the Paramount stuff is leaving, or all the Peacock stuff is leaving, or NBC. These streaming services are getting pretty lucrative, and it seems like Paramount Plus, and at least Paramount Plus, is playing to stay in the market, and good for them for this pickup, especially because so far, from the looks of it, the action, the trailers, and all of it, it looks like they are actually pumping some money into it.
Yeah, which is good. Honestly, I'm really surprised it's not like a Netflix, or I could see Amazon picking this up.
Speaking of Amazon, Sony is currently in talks to develop a TV series based on the God of War video games. This one I don't have as much confidence in. The series is intended to be live action. It is still in the negotiation phase, though, so there is still hope. Amazon is reportedly gunning hard for the rights, though, but it could very well be something that maybe Paramount Plus or HBO Max or Netflix ends up picking up. I unfortunately won't be able to see this because I don't do Amazon, but a God of War series, I think this might end up being something that it's going to be another one, much like Halo. They're going to have to blow a huge budget on it, because you can't just have Kratos and dialogue scenes in medieval huts or Greek towers or whatever. That shit's going to be really expensive, as much as you green screen it.
Yeah, no, that one, God, that's a tough one to do, honestly. The way I could see it working out maybe a little bit better is maybe if they take it from like the God of War, the last one, on the PS4, kind of that storyline. Because Norse mythology, I would say, is probably easier to replicate on screen for a cheaper budget than, say, like Greek. Greek is a lot of, gold statues. And, if you look at like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, like trying to make that into a TV show would be a monstrous amount of green screen. And it's just, the less you can use, the better. Although, I mean, I'm kind of curious with, which aspect they're going to go for, because like those original God of War games are, old at this point. So I think a lot of people right now think of God of War and they think of that, that last game, which was phenomenal. But I don't know which kind of, I'm curious to see where they go with it, and what kind of part of the story they come with. Also, I think it just has a better story. You got the son, you've got, to a TV series, there's a lot more drama you can depict with that timeline.
And that's going to be cheaper too, to film father and son scenes, especially as they get to really establish that relationship for the audience, and less of Kratos mowing down, okay, what's the next god or what's the next monster that he needs to defeat. And that's tough to do for a TV series, because, I mean, what do you end the season maybe with a giant boss fight, or him progressing to kill Zeus. And you could extend that probably, I guess, for 9-10 seasons as you go through the different gods, but you're going to have to really fill in the gaps with, I guess, adventures that Kratos goes on in between, if they really do want to adapt that 2002 adventure. I really don't, I don't want that job of adapting God of War, because that's a tough one.
Either, and God forbid they turn it into like some kind of weird monster of the week situation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, now he fights the Hydras.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, now this, and then like, he stops off in a small village and fixes one of their problems, and I'm like, no, that wouldn't work, in my opinion. That's not what they're looking for. I think that the last game, the PS4 game, is probably their best bet, as far as like if you think of like a Game of Thrones style, like that kind of production value, that kind of tone to it, I think that would work the best.
And that seems to be the market too. It seems like people and all the studios are trying to find the next Game of Thrones. Like WB shopped off Lord of the Rings to Amazon, although now from the looks of that, it looks like shit.
Oh, well, I mean, that whole situation, like I understand what they're doing and all that, but like there's specific lore reasons for the way that certain characters look in that, and they're just kind of changing it all around. Like, the dwarf women not having beards and stuff like that. Like, you have to understand, when you pick up Lord of the Rings, like, that's a heavy crown.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very established fan base. And we're not just talking about movies, but, like, you've got The Hobbit, which is, the actual book. You've got the movie, or the Lord of the Rings trilogy actual books. There's an entire book about the lore of that world. It seems like they're ignoring too much, and it has pissed off a lot of really hardcore fans, which should be the easiest people for you to pick up.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's kind of the same issue we were talking about almost with Cowboy Bebop, or anytime they make an adaptation of anything that has a very dedicated or a very attentive fan base, that as soon as they get a whiff of, no, this is not what Lord of the Rings is, or this is not what He-Man is, they
Right.
immediately drop it for the most part. It seems like very few people actually go through and finish the entire thing. And that right there, you're only relying on your general audience, and you just pray and hope that they're like casual enough to, I don't give a shit, I just want to see some dwarf thing. And that there's enough numbers of that to keep the show going.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's such a flip of the coin on whether it's going to catch on with that, without that hardcore audience, that that real fan base like
Mhm.
pushing it onwards and talking about it. Like, how much of those people that are just kind of like peripheral are you going to pick up?
Right, that's a big thing too. How many people watch the show because they said, "Hey, my friend told me this was great. I'm going to check it out," as opposed to,
Right.
"I'm never going to fucking check this out because I whatever." But if you know
Yeah.
someone and you trust them, they're going to give it a shot, at least an episode or two, and from there,
Exactly.
you'll pick up a percentage.
Well, it's like also too, like how many people that aren't, all right, one, how many people that are into fantasy don't know Lord of the Rings? And how many people that aren't into fantasy are just going to like, oh, well, it's a Lord of the Rings show. I'll watch that.
Mhm.
Like, it's just, it doesn't work.
That is it is still pretty funny though that Warner Brothers wouldn't do the show themselves, and I'm sure it's a money thing, but they were
I'm
like,
sure
"All
it
right, you
is.
you can do the rights this time and have it Amazon." So
Yeah. Well, also, I think Bezos backed up the freaking Brinks truck to that situation.
a fan base that I don't quite understand if this is real project you want to go for, but they're going for it after 15 years. I Am Legend is getting a sequel starring Michael B. Jordan from Creed, and this is all according to Deadline.
Okay.
And Will Smith is apparently set to return, although we don't know to what capacity. One of the alternate endings to I Am Legend has Will Smith living at the end. And the theatrical release or the DVD main release, all of that has the regular ending where he passes away at the end of the film. So there's a lot of questions as to, are there going to be flashbacks with a modern Will Smith? Are they going to retcon the whole ending and go with the deleted one, or I'm assuming what the director wanted to do, because from what I understand, the studio felt it wasn't like an impactful enough ending, so they refilmed some things. Or will they retcon it so that they could have Will Smith in the show, or I'm sorry, in the movie in some capacity? Now, what do you think? Is this kind of a weird sequel or something that seems a little unnecessary at this point?
It's one I wouldn't have expected. That's for sure. It's kind of like I wasn't really expecting another Independence Day.
Hmm.
Will Smith's old stuff is getting a lot of love though lately. You've got the what is that show Bel Air, which is a
Right.
dramatic reinterpretation of Fresh Prince. You had, I mean, it wasn't too long ago that they did, Independence Day 2 or whatever they called it. And now this kind of an interesting situation. I mean, I don't not like Michael B. Jordan, and I thought he did really well in the Creed movies, especially. Yeah, no, it could be weird. I would prefer that it's like, I don't know, maybe he plays his son that escaped, because I remember in the beginning of the movie, like him and he sends his wife and kid like off.
Right. That's true.
So it could be one of those situations. And honestly, for this kind of movie, I'd rather them have Michael B. Jordan do it than Jaden. Yeah, I'm not I'm curious. I don't know how they do it, but like I could see like where Will was, Will Smith's character was maybe like taking videos of him like doing stuff, kind of like that like blogging for nobody kind of
Mhm.
thing that you see in apocalyptic movies a lot. And Michael B's character, finding those and trying to figure out what happened and whatnot. Because I mean, his whole thing was he was looking for a cure.
Yeah, that could be a good way to go about it. With actors like Michael B. Jordan or Will Smith, I think that there is enough here to at least have it make its money back,
Yeah.
especially since I Am Legend. I feel like it was a hit at that time. I remember going to theaters, seeing it. It was a packed theater. It's also the first appearance of Batman versus Superman. Do you remember that banner?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I remember that.
And it almost has the same logo that they ended up going with later on. So that was kind of neat. And then the other like bright memory I have sitting in theaters and watching this is when there's just a casual pan of a gas station as he's walking past it, and everyone gasped at the prices. They're
Yeah,
like,
and now it's like basically. I actually saw a meme today. Like there are parts of like California where it's more expensive than it was in I Am Legend.
"Oh, wow." So it's no longer a big now modern people that are watching I Am Legend, it's just a normal scene. Like, yep, okay, those are the gas prices.
Yeah. Oh, wow. No, it doesn't change in the apocalypse. Weird.
It got cheaper in the apocalypse.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense.
People in like Los Angeles are like, wow, I wish I had this gas price.
Less cars means less demand for gas, so I guess the prices went down. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. At least, in the movie, he was able to make the gas pumps work without anybody there. What was it, a Mustang GT 500 or
Yes.
250 or something like that?
That was awesome. So I think I'll be there. I think I will watch this, as much as I'm like, I don't see this happening. Yeah, it might not be necessary, but sure, I'll check it out.
Well, I mean, how many movies are actually necessary these days?
Right. Yeah, as long as it makes money, then it becomes necessary, right? It did its
Right.
job.
This is one of those things where it just needs to be good enough.
Just to skate on there, yeah.
Yep. You're like, yep, we made it, and Michael B. Jordan got paid, and Will Smith's probably going to get paid, and it'll be all right.
So on the podcast, we don't cover a lot of Matt Reeves or the Battinson, but some of this does relate to Discovery and the MCU, and I think this one in particular, we can get a little discussion on directors' visions and how it won't work with certain studios. In an interview with Variety, Matt Reeves, who directed the Batman, expressed that he wouldn't fit in the MCU. He said, quote, "There has to be some level of discovery for me where I have some freedom to find my way. If I have to come into something that's already set too firmly, then I think I would get lost, and I don't think they would be happy with me either." End quote. We've seen that already with Kevin Feige, Lord Feige firing the old Ant-Man director, bringing in someone new. We saw it with Star Wars and Rogue One. They brought on someone. So it seems like it's a Disney or at least a big studio problem. We've seen it with Disney. We've seen it with Warner Brothers. If the director wants to do too much of their own thing, then the studio comes in and intervenes and starts to say, well, you really got to punch it up with some more action, or you got to have some more romance, or they'll even go in and completely redo the whole film like Fox did with Fantastic Four. And I think he's absolutely right. I don't understand how there's controversy behind this. People that like to pretend that the MCU allows their directors and creatives to do what they want, but there's definitely a cookie cutter formula there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this is controversial in the least. I mean, Disney movies in general, even like a lot of their animated stuff, it follows a formula.
And it works for them.
It works.
Billions
they make
of dollars.
money. I'm not faulting them for it. I don't particularly enjoy it for the most part. But, like watch any Disney animated movie. You can tell exactly what's going to happen. They do it well, it works for them, and they keep making money. So why would they change that if they're still making money with that? It cheapens production costs. They don't have to hire as many writers. They, could bring in these directors. I mean, you could honestly stick a almost no-name director in a Disney movie and it'd come out basically good enough.
Exactly. Some of these people that I've seen on Twitter, and it comes from the Snyderverse movement too, where they're like, I want Zach to make a Wolverine movie or an Incredible Hulk film. And it's like, he would never, like they would never let him make the movie that he wants. It just wouldn't happen. Like it's just and right now, even current Warner Brothers won't let him even finish off Justice League 2 and 3 in spite of how the first one did. So it's just always kind of funny of like, what if, but it's like, be realistic. It's not going to happen under the current regime. And especially while these movies are making millions of dollars, there's way too much at stake.
Yeah. Honestly, like I think there was a point in time where if stars had aligned, Zach could have made a really great Wolverine movie, but it would have had to be like just after the last, what was it, Old Man Logan movie, and before Disney purchased it, that part where like Fox really wasn't doing anything with it, and he just came to them and like, hey, I'd like to make a Wolverine movie, and they're kind of like, all right, well, what the hell? And then I could see them giving him pretty free rein on it. But yeah, now that it's under the Disney banner, there's no way it would work out.
No, if anything, Rebel Moon would have been a Star Wars spinoff by now, because that was they would have easily gone, okay, well, we saw that pitch, we know what it is, let's go ahead and spin that off and bring him on. And instead, Netflix took it, and they're making their own Star Wars with it.
We'll just add some lightsabers, and we'll bring in these characters that nobody cares about, and
and sell it.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be like a cameo from the girl that Finn was into in the movie, and
yep,
here we go. It's a Star Wars movie now. Oh, by the way, Mandalorian's going to show up right at the very end and take his helmet off.
That's always what tricks Star Wars fans, though, because that happened with Rogue One. Where like the whole movie, to me, I didn't like it. And I feel like every time after the movie released, anytime customers would come in and talk about it, they would only talk about the Darth Vader scene at the very end when he's mowing down the guys. And it's like, and that was a reshoot. That's something they added after the fact. And I was saying, if that Vader scene wasn't in there, most people would not have been tricked into thinking they liked that movie.
Star Wars, especially around that period of time, they were like, because you got to think it'd been so long since they got some like decent Star Wars stuff to go with, other than like the animated shows and stuff like that. Those were pretty good. But yeah, no, all you got to do to make it successful and convince people you like it is have a big character show up at some point and do something cool.
That's it.
Right, and that's one of the things that drives me nuts about it. Because like if you look at the original trilogy, which are it wasn't really about that. It was like the whole team doing a thing. But it is what it is. It's been Disney-fied, and I'm kind of not here for it anymore.
We do have more Battinson news as well, as after the Batman's release, Warner Brothers villain Toby Emmerich has touted that they value the power of the filmmakers. So kind of taking Matt Reeves' comment and saying, yeah, this is because of us. He said in an interview with Deadline, quote, "The secret of the movie business is quality. It's the best business strategy for both theatrical motion pictures and superhero movies. The movies don't have to all have the same tone or interlock with other DC movies or have an Easter egg that sets up another film. Quality is the most important factor for a studio, and the biggest thing you can do to influence quality is the filmmaker that you hire." End quotes. That seems like a lot of bullshit coming from Toby. A lot of please don't fire me discovery. Look at how big the Batman has done.
Honestly, look, I think what he said is correct. I don't think he believes it.
No.
It's kind of like Biden at the State of the Union. You know what I mean? Like, what you're saying sounds good, but I don't think that you're actually going to do it.
That's the problem with Toby, especially because we've seen his behaviors in the past. It's like the last 20 fucking movies you've had your hands in, you fucked up completely.
Right. It's one of those actions speak louder than words at this point with him. And his actions don't add up to what these words add up to.
A bunch of articles have come out after the Batman's weekend taken, talking about trusting the filmmaker, and Toby and the rest at Warner Brothers kind of trying to take credit for it and really bring up, they even brought up Joker, like of all films, the ones that they didn't want to produce, so they split the production with a Chinese company. They gave the Chinese company a shit ton of those box office returns, and they're trying to say, look at this director vision of Joker, and now with Matt Reeves as the Batman, the two movies that are making us a lot of money. Ignore everything in between, please. But Ray Fisher said it on Twitter of, look at this desperate plea from Toby to Discovery to kind of pad up his portfolio and show David Zaslav, like, I'm not the guy you want to fire. I've just made a movie that's going to make millions, and I told Bobby this is exactly what he was going to do right before the fucking movie released.
Yeah, no, it's very, you see this in honestly most of the Warner Brothers companies right now. That I was reading CNN the other day, they finally named who's going to be taking over that. Which, honestly, what's funny, before this whole Discovery thing, I had no idea who owned CNN. I knew I didn't like them, but I had no idea. And so they have this meeting with the new guy, and he's talking about, like, hey, we're going to get back to, like, actual journalism and, like, reporting facts and just straight news. And then, Brian Stelter's quoted as saying, well, I'm fired. I'm like, well, what does that tell you about what you've been doing, dude?
Do you think that's a positive move then, for sure?
I think they've got to do something. I mean, a lot of these news companies, like, I'm not just singling out CNN, it's just that they're the ones that are getting, purchased.
Right.
A lot of these news channels, like, most of the people I know get their news from the internet, like independent people. They're not going to Fox or CNN or whatever. And if you look at their ratings dynamics, it's very telling. Like, their key demo numbers, that 18 to 35, are super low. And compared to what they were getting, a few years ago, even, it's just, they're not getting eyeballs anymore. People are going online. CNN's also trying that CNN Plus, where it's like, hey, we're less censored here. I'm like, oh, that's not necessarily a good thing with the direction you guys have been going. Like, now our opinions are just free to be said. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess. I don't know who's paying $10 a month to watch a channel that nobody's watching for free.
Even at the gym, they'll have CNN or Fox or some of these news stations, and it's always an old guy or an old woman that's sitting there watching it and glued to the TV. And
Exactly.
out of curiosity, I'm always like, okay, what's the deal? What's happening? And right now, it's a lot of Ukraine stuff, but they'll
Well,
have
yeah.
school board stuff or mask stuff, and it's like things that I have no interest in, obviously. So,
Right.
but I guess, I mean, clearly, I'm not the only one. I'm in that demographic of people that are not watching these news stations, and I admit it, I don't. I really don't. I do get a lot of my news from your Discord, our Discord, Twitter. And
Yeah.
some people, I'm sure in their 50s would be like, they get their news from Twitter, or anyone might say that. But it's like, yeah, I mean, until more of the censorship bullshit continues, I can still more or less get news extremely quickly on my phone.
Well, it's not that, all right. So there's a difference, in my opinion, about getting your news from Twitter, which is like the people that just like read tweets.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, that's what happened in 144 characters or less. And people like, I look on Twitter and I get information. I find articles from places that I might not have looked before. I found a lot of the news sources that I like that are, actual websites, or, even some YouTubers and stuff like that, I found it on Twitter, and then, you look more into it. It's just, that's the key aspect of it. And you can't get news and be lazy anymore and have it be as reliable as people used to think it was.
No,
And
that's very true.
that's the other thing I think that people are realizing now. It's not that news has gotten worse. It's just that there's more sunshine. You know what I mean? Like, when Dan Rather was on the news, like, people trusted him because they didn't have options or places to see opinions that disagreed. Like, it was just, this is it. This is what you got, and you trusted it. And now you have a lot more options and a lot more people coming out and competing. And it's very similar with, movies. I think there's a lot of really great movies that are getting put up on, the independent people who make documentaries and stuff, and just put it up on YouTube, and, have a Patreon, and that's how they're supporting themselves. And I think it's great that decentralization of information is one of the best things that's happened.
That's one of the things that Millennial Mike was saying as far as the movies and documentaries, where in the 90s, a lot of these filmmakers wouldn't have a Netflix or HBO Max or whomever to swoop in and say, hey, put it on our thing. Here's, your money.
Yeah, here's a check.
Instead, it'd be, oh, well, I guess I'm not making that, or nobody's seeing it. That's even worse. Like, you go through, you make it, and then nobody watches
you
it.
go and you make it, and then nobody gets to see it. And you might get like one film festival or something that takes pity on you. But now, like, you can put it up online. Like, I know there's people that make a movie and they make their own website. They don't even put it on YouTube or a platform. They just, all right, well, I uploaded it to my website, and you can pay, $1, $10, something to watch it, and there it is. And I think that's great.
Yeah, it's kind of what Louis C.K. does with his latest specials as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. A lot of comedians that, aren't necessarily on that level of, well, I guess it used to be HBO was the one that was picking up the comedy specials, but now it'd be like, Netflix, for instance, they pick up a lot of comedy, and Amazon's getting into that too. I've even seen a couple that are like exclusive to Hulu, which is kind of odd. Yeah, no, you can literally make a thing and put it out there, and if it takes off, it takes off, and, let the market kind of figure out where it wants to be.
Fuck yeah. So fuck you, Toby Emmerich. You're going to get fired.
I hope he does, honestly. He's one of the people.
He's the head of the snake, man. He's got to go.
Yeah, there's a few in that situation that I wouldn't mind seeing, move on to no pasture at all.
Well, Ann Sarnoff so far is gone, so that's one right there. And that's a big piece of the puzzle. So Toby goes. I think Hamada's pretty much gets his balls cut off at that point.
Yeah. Then I just need somebody to buy Disney.
Yeah. Well, save your Star Wars, right?
Oh, just, you know what? If like,
just watch Rebel Moon.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm excited about that. I'm totally there for it. I mean, it's a Snyder movie. I'm in for it regardless. But then he's like, hey, it's like Star Wars without all the bullshit. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's going to be the embarrassing part. Like, Disney's going to hate when that fucking movie comes out, because that, chances are it's going to be solid, but when it comes out, it's going to be, this is more Star Wars than Star Wars. And they're going to fucking hate reading that shit.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. That's going to be so good.
One of the last news stories we have here is there was a Ben Affleck as Best Batman article that went up last week. It named Ben as the preferred live-action Batman among fans. This was a poll that they went up and put, and Ben Affleck won over Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton was in second place at that time. And this kept coming up online. It was shared on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Like, it was really popping up. Aside from Snyderverse people retweeting it, because it's like, yeah, this is positive press, whatever. People in the movement did some digging and found that a bunch of stations owned by Nexstar Media Group were specifically liking and sharing the article, including staff members were liking and sharing the article as well. Nexstar has major ownership with Discovery. So that was a big piece of the puzzle where they're like, okay, Discovery is pushing this article like crazy about Ben Affleck being Batman. And it's speculated that Zaslav ordered this to test engagement, to see what the level of interest would be in maybe negotiations with Ben are happening. I don't know, but to see what the waters are. What do you think about this one? Is it, I took it as more, it's already happening and Discovery is pushing is starting the marketing now, but some people are saying that this is more them testing the waters.
To me, it looks more like, yeah, they're testing the waters and seeing kind of where the fan base is. I enjoy Batfleck. I still wouldn't say he's my favorite, but I think he did a good job. It's kind of interesting. Discovery's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, which I really kind of think are a good strategy. Like they're using their other departments to kind of see what they need to be doing, which I think is a really good idea as far as kind of, you've got this big ship and now which way you'd want to steer it and trying to figure that out, which I think is a lot more care than a lot of other companies that take over another production company do.
That's what gives me a lot of confidence with this, because it sounds like they're doing their research, and they damn well better when you hold properties like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, plus the rest of Warner Brothers, all of those properties. You'd hope that they would analyze every bit of what they just purchased and try to maximize, okay, over the next year, which ones are we going to make to try to make back try to cut down on this debt that we've now inherited from AT&T under this new market of Discovery Warner Brothers. And that's a big thing for Zaslav to do. And I know that AT&T is okay with sinking the boat and like, okay, well, they didn't do it well in a couple years, just sink that company. And I'm assuming all the debt goes with them, right?
I would imagine. I had no idea up until this whole thing was announced where they were going to take over like the Warner Brothers stuff, that I had no idea how big Discovery was as a company.
It's kind of insane, right?
Yeah, like I think of them as like, Discovery Channel and like History Channel and, all those kind of things, but they're gigantic. They own a lot of stuff and they've got a lot of money behind them to be able to take on that kind of debt. And obviously they have to have some sort of plan. You don't just take on that amount of debt. Like AT&T kind of screwed themselves by doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I mean, they had to look at it as, all right, this is what we can do. And now I feel like they're kind of in that fine tuning stage. I feel like they have a direction that they want to go, but now they're just trying to kind of figure out. I think it's more of a prioritizing research than like not knowing really what they're going to do with it.
The merging itself starts in a couple of days, and then in May is when it's going to fully finalize. So somewhere between now and May, I think we'll get at least some answers as to what their intentions are with Warner Brothers and DC Comics and everything else. I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about how AT&T kind of has this history of doing that. Like they bought up that satellite company and then just completely hemorrhaged money on it. And then they bought up Warner Brothers and lost a shit ton of money on that too. So it's kind of like AT&T, just stick to the telecommunication stuff. This is all you need to do. Like you've tried it. It didn't work.
That's an option. But I mean, honestly, if I could, speak directly to Zaslav, as I'm sure he's a very avid listener.
Could be. He's testing everything, right?
Can we get the History Channel to be shows about history again?
Do they have they owned it since, or do they now own it?
I believe they've owned History for quite a long time. Like it was a Discovery property, but like I don't want Pawn Stars,
but it does so well over there.
Yeah, but here's the thing, there's this meme that once you turn 35, you as a man you have to pick like one of two things, and it's you have to be super into one of three things. I think you have to be super into World War II history. You have to get really into smoked meats, or really into firearms. And I already really like smoked meats, World War II, and firearms. So I'm kind of like the triple threat when it comes to that. But I'd really like some more, tell me about the secret life of Hitler. Bring those back. Because I used to watch, History Channel used to be one of those things that I just would have on in the background. And I absorbed so much through that. But now it's like Pawn Stars and Cajun Pawn Stars and this and that. And I'm like, you're basically TLC at this point.
Yeah, it had its phase. I remember when it shifted from like hour-long specials about just this one aspect of World War II, and then
Right.
it shifted to ancient aliens or Hitler's reptilian alien discovery,
Right.
and then it just kind of continued in that direction. I'm assuming because ratings spiked. Like, what is that crazy shit? Let me see that.
Right.
And then now there's a shit ton of reality shows on TL, all the other stuff that they own as well.
Yeah, it's really become like a reality show thing, which I mean, obviously it's making more money than CW did, but God, I couldn't believe that. Did you hear about that? Like they literally haven't made money at all.
It's been terrible. Like they should
Since
shut that shit
WB and
down.
UPN merged, the CW has not made
No.
profit one of its 15 years.
No, and you can tell by what sucks too is their quality of programming has like it was already pretty bad, but now it's like terrible. They're allowing anything and everything up there. They're doing that Gotham Knights TV show, and
Yeah.
they're casting all these like characters that I know, but no one else fucking will tune in to watch, like Cullen and Harper Row. They're not characters that anyone really knows, even in the Batman community, because they're relatively recent. They've just shown up in the last 10 years. And even in the comics, they're not really popular. They don't have their own miniseries or anything. But let's cast them in Gotham Knights. Let's fucking do that for the CW. It just kind of blows my mind.
They make some really weird decisions. I feel like Supernatural was really kind of like holding everything together, and then it's gone, and they just don't know what to do anymore. But like they had this thing where like for a while they would be really good for like, a couple seasons. Like the first couple seasons of Arrow were like really popular. The first couple seasons of Flash were like really popular. But like I sat down, like I went on Netflix, right? I'm like, well, I've watched the first couple seasons of Arrow. Like, let me check out and see kind of where it went. Because it was one of those things where it's on TV and I'm not binge watching it, and I just kind of lost track. And then they keep doing this thing where they're like trying to get you to watch all the shows at the same time. Like, all right, but if it's not streamable because there's so much crossover that you miss parts of what's going on in like these big episodes that it's just not enjoyable. And they need to understand that like people don't watch TV like they used to. Right. Like that used to work because, you'd have like, all right, well, Thursday nights, we're going to sit down and watch this. And like, oh, look, the guy from Arrow is in this episode of The Flash. And then, all right, well, we got to go watch that episode of Arrow because, they'd watch all the shows on a network. But now most people like kind of wait for, I know more people that wait for a show to be over and then go watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Then watch it while it's on.
It's funny how some of the younger brokettes aren't going to really understand that concept of getting the TV guide, checking when something's going to be on. I used to highlight it, and then I'd make sure that I would be there. And no phones where you can set your alarm and a reminder. I would just try to remember. Like I would pull out the TV guide and look at that day's program and be like, okay, this time I got to watch this. And I'd miss out on a lot of stuff, unfortunately, but the stuff that I could remember, I'd watch it. And I kind of had that really hit me when the first time that I saw Leo watch a commercial, it was at my parents' house because here it's all streaming or Blu-rays.
Right.
But at my parents', they have cable, so they'll put on Paw Patrol and a bunch of the shows that I don't have access to. And Paw Patrol went to commercial, and it starts playing something, and he goes, "What happened?" And and my mom goes, "It's a commercial. It'll be on." He's like, "What happened?" And finally, she fast forwards the commercials because they had recorded the episode for him. And then he got used to that. Like, oh, hey, what happened? Change, like fast forward. And then he would get used to like, what are these commercials? What fucking bullshit?
What is this? I don't want this. Why are they telling me about denture cream?
Why did the program end?
Yeah. And it's always so abrupt too.
Yes.
Like it's weird. And what's funny to me is like you go back and like say you're streaming something and they don't cut it quite right for the commercial, because like for the commercial there'd be like all right, it goes to commercial and then it would come back and it would play like 10 to 15 seconds of what happened just before the commercial to kind of remind you of what was happening.
Yeah.
And now you just get like this little like, no frame, and then it's like repeating the 15 seconds again. And I'm like, guys, you don't have to do this. You don't have to live like this anymore. But honestly, like I remember like looking at the TV guide, and because when I was a kid, I was always into like activities. Like I did martial arts and I played basketball and I wrestled and, all that stuff. So like I wasn't home to watch TV, but I did have a VCR. and trying to get the VCR to record the show that I wanted to watch.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And like it would work half the time.
Mhm.
And then like, especially if it was on, I know MTV did this all the time, but they would start their shows like at 11:55 instead of 12.
I couldn't
And if you,
stand that.
yeah,
No.
if you didn't remember it because they wanted you to watch it, they didn't want you to record it.
So you'd have to adjust your timer to now record 5 minutes before, sometimes
Yep.
10 minutes before, or after the show ended, because sometimes they would end them late too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I remember those. Oh, God, that was a nightmare. Now you've got DVR after that, and that was like mind blown. Like I could just tell this to like record the show, and now I don't even have cable.
Right. Yeah, you just click on the thing and it starts playing exactly where you left off.
Yeah, I can be watching something on my computer, and I'm like, well, I've got to go do this thing in the kitchen, and I just pick up my phone and start playing it on my phone, and it's exactly where I was.
It's amazing.
We're so spoiled now.
We
My
are.
son has no idea.
No. But we can tell them and they're gonna be like, all right, Dad, yeah, whatever.
Well, it's like the thing where it's like, the kid finds a 3.5-inch floppy, and he's like, why do you have a 3D printed save button?
I've never seen that one. That's good.
Oh, God. Like, I saw that and it hurt my head. Actually, I saw a thing too. Where they asked little kids, like, hey, how do you use a phone? And they just put their hand flat up to their face. They don't do the thing with the fingers anymore because phones don't look like that.
Yeah. That's true. Or like, there's a lot of those motions that old people like us still do.
Yeah. And people that are younger are like, what the heck are you doing? Well, it's like, you can't hang up your smartphone in anger.
No, you can't hang up on anyone like that.
had a thing about that, actually. He's like, what do? You hit the screen real hard? Like, no, it doesn't work.
It's like, fuck you, and then tap furiously.
You like swipe.
The last thing I want to talk about with, as far as this last news story, and did you see The Batman?
I have not. I might check it out like once it hits streaming services, but it takes a lot for me to like want to go to a theater and take that time out of my day because I've got a kid, I've got a job, I've got a wife to manage.
No, I get that 100%. It's like you have to plan a week ahead of time if you want to just go out to see a movie.
Exactly. It's like, all right, well, can your mom watch the kid?
Yeah.
For this time, and then like her parents live about an hour away from us too, so it's not like, oh, we can just go drop them off on the way. It's like, all right, well, do we want to go to a theater down there, or does grandma want him for the weekend, or like
right.
It's a whole production.
Do we want to get dinner after or before? Like, forget about it.
Yeah, and then like these days with like restaurants, especially over here, for some reason, it's just like if you're trying to get someplace on like a Friday or a Saturday night, like you just gotta, unless you want Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that you're going to make it to the movie on time if you try to get dinner before.
No. Yeah. Everyone's out. Everyone's overspending and people are understaffed and understocked, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's terrible.
It's crazy. I tried to go to Dunkin' Donuts the other day and like 5 out of the 5 items I tried to order, they're like, oh, well, we don't have this or that. And I'm like, but I understand that part of it. It's just like a couple of the things I'd ordered were like the new seasonal thing that they were advertising. Not if you're going to having trouble getting stock on things, maybe cut down on the seasonal stuff for a little bit till that kind of resolves itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm a little familiar with some of that since Kelly works in a similar field. And
yeah,
I know that in her company, her particular store would get less of a certain product, even though she's like, my volume is insane. Like I kill sales, but they have like this stupid metric, especially as the company gets bigger. Instead of looking at each store specifically, like, okay, you do make a shit ton of money. Why don't we give you this? They look at some weird stat from last year. Yeah.
Or like regions. They're like, well, this region typically does better, even though like, half the stores sell like gangbusters and the other half are like kind of mediocre.
Right.
But they'll prioritize stuff to this area because the people that live there are, maybe more affluent or something like that, or it's, a higher population.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, honestly, that's like my big guard. I know I sent out that tweet the other day. Like, I don't have any issue with like the employees or the management of the store. It's just stop advertising limited edition stuff if you can't make sure that it's going to be in the stores when people go to get it.
Like I said, man, I was going to go to Dunkin' and get that, but I'll instead go to Starbucks and I will get one of their energy drinks or one of their egg bites. They're delicious.
Yeah, honestly, you know what I've had the best luck with is stuff like that. I can just go to Wawa. We don't have a Starbucks over in my city. But like Wawa, they never are out of stuff. I don't know how they're
No.
doing.
Yeah, they aren't. You're right.
They always have the stuff. It doesn't matter.
And they're always kind of busy too.
Every time, but it's always quick. Wawa's out there killing it.
Yeah, they are. I wish they were public. I'd love to own some Wawa stock. I've looked.
Honestly, though, that might be the key to their success.
Yeah,
You know?
like, don't fuck with this. We're private and we're just gonna keep doing our thing.
Exactly. It's kind of like, Publix over here. Like,
Yeah.
there's some, most of them are pretty good about keeping stuff in stock, but like, some of their decisions, I'm just like, really? That's what you're doing?
I know it's a bit of a tangent, but the reason I asked if you had seen the Batman, it's obviously been I've seen very mixed things on Facebook and on Twitter about the film,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen it. I'm not watching it, but throughout the whole thing, there's been this trend. Still, it actually went up even higher while the film released of make the Batfleck movie and restore the Snyderverse. They trended like crazy throughout the Pattinson film's debut, and in some cases, it outtrended even the Batman. So it's one of those things that it got the conversation once again going of probably the opposite of what Warner Brothers currently wants of here's your new Batman, let's just focus on him. Instead, it's like, well, we want the old Batman too. And it got this like crazy.
We want both Batmans.
Well, and that's where a lot of this miscommunication comes up, especially on Facebook. I see I'm in a lot of DC groups, and it's more toxic to me, in my opinion, it's more toxic than Twitter. It's also dumber than Twitter because I'm not saying older people are dumber, but I'm saying there's an older demographic on Facebook that the way they type or their ideas are not all thought out. So they just throw it out there on the groups. And it's like, so when I'm on Facebook and they say stupid shit all the time, all day, because they have nothing better to do. And it's like, accept the Battinson, Batfleck is no longer here. That's never going to happen. And it's like, look, I don't have to, but I'm also not saying don't make any more the Batman films. I'm just saying, make the ones that we watched, the Snyderverse people. So,
right.
So seeing all of that happen, it just kind of made it, to me, really funny that it put fuel in the fire of, well, that's great that that movie's doing great. Here's our favorite Batman. And like, we hijacked the hashtags of Batman to Ben Affleck.
I mean, that's cool. Like, and that's one thing I've noticed that like the Snyder Cut demographic is just what I'll call it, that they want Batfleck movie and the Snyderverse restored. They're not saying, I've never seen them say like, hey, don't make anything else.
Right. It's
just, hey, this is what we want and we're gonna push for it until we get it, or you flat out say like, no, it's never gonna happen. And it keeps kind of getting teased, which indicates that there is some hope. So I mean, keep pushing for it.
No, exactly right. Especially with Zach out there putting out the Infinite Crisis stuff and all that. It's like, something's happening and we're going to keep pushing.
Exactly. And it's like, it's not like they're calling for that over to the detriment of anything else. They're like, yeah, no, it's cool. Like, I think DC, it tried to be Marvel. It didn't work. And I think that a lot of the fan base is still kind of in that mode though. We're like, all right, there's one Batman.
Sure.
There's one Superman. It doesn't have to be. There can be multiple versions at the same time in just different movies.
I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to discuss this and I'd completely forgotten. And now, like, I want to know if you agree with me on this one because after the Batman's quote unquote success, I don't know how you measure that unless it hits $1 billion, is it or not? I don't know. I don't know how people are
and honestly,
what
is the version of hitting $1 billion right now?
Exactly.
As far as theaters go.
Right, with everything going on. But there's been this message, and we saw it from Toby too, of WB needs to just focus on making these kinds of movies we're back to that again, Jarrod, of just make these standalone movies. Don't worry about other characters. Don't worry about other universes. Yet in the same breath, they will ask, does this universe have a Superman? Does the Battinson universe have a Superman? Do you think we'll see a team up? And it's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't ask for standalone films and then start asking for tie-in movies of like, what about that Superman? Where does this tie into that universe? And it's like, I think deep down, as much as people say they want standalone movies, they want a shared universe. They just want a shared universe of the thing that they enjoyed. The Reeves verse, for example, now with Battinson, or the Snyderverse. And I think it's all bullshit when they talk about standalone films because they then immediately start asking about what's that universe's whatever Wonder Woman look like? And it's just, it frustrates the shit out of me because you're now asking for the thing that you were bitching about.
Right. Yeah, no, that part is very frustrating to me. I personally, I prefer the idea of just a standalone thing. Like, let the Snyderverse be its own thing. Let the Reeveverse, it's kind of like the Nolanverse. Those were
Right.
some of my favorite Batman movies, but I never thought like, I wonder who Superman is to Christian Bale's Batman. Like, no, it's not mentioned. It's not brought up.
What's his name? It would have been Henry Cavill. Did you ever see the concept art?
Yeah.
It's crazy shit. Like just seeing the Christian Bale Batman in that world of Man of Steel. It's like, that's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit. You know what I mean? But it's fine. Like, just let them be movies. And I think also some people get a little uppity about like, well, for instance, the Nolanverse isn't a standalone movie. I'm like, yeah, but it's a standalone universe that they made 3 movies in.
And that was,
you know what I mean? And that's what people are referring to when they talk about like standalone. They're not talking about like, well, you can never make another Battinson movie. No, you can, and it can be, with continuity with the first one. That's fine. It just doesn't need to tie into Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and, everything else.
I gotcha. So kind of like instead of going the route that they were going in of, okay, well, we're making a Wonder Woman film and that needs to tie in somehow to BVS or
Right.
to the Snyderverse. And that's when they kind of made it sort of work. But yeah, I see what you're saying now. Instead, make these branches of multiverses of, okay, you fuck around with your Reevesverse over there. You fuck around with your Snyderverse over here. Do what you want. And the fans there'll be some that watch all of it because I've seen it. And there'll be some that just, it's like, great, I'll watch the Snyderverse movies only or whatever.
Yeah. And you can like, Robert Pattinson is Batman, and that can be your favorite Batman, and that's fine. Go enjoy it. Nobody is trying to take that away from you.
Yeah. Now I will make fun of it, but
yeah, but
that's
like,
on you if you're offended by
not
it.
Make it like,
yeah, that's
fine. Just go watch it.
One of my favorite things to do in these Facebook groups is when someone says, like, I didn't think it was good. And I'll jump in there and just be like, really? Oh, man. Well, then I guess I won't check it out. And all these people would jump on like, no, you got to see it. No, see it for yourself. And I'm like, how are you all so shook over one guy saying, I don't think I'll see it then? Like they all freak out.
Look, they need that $12. Okay.
And one guy I told him, I'm like, is this Hamada's burner account? I'm like, is this Toby Emmerich on the other side of this? What's going on?
Yeah, no.
That's how they act.
People get ridiculous with this fandom stuff. Like, just enjoy what you enjoy. I don't care. It really takes nothing away from me if you want them to make something that you like. And it doesn't take anything away from you if I want them to make, like, the Justice, Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2. Like, I want to see it. I saw the Nightmare scene. It looks great. Let's do it.
What's his name? Joe Manganiello just changed his profile pic to the Nightmare Deathstroke on Instagram. So everyone freaked out too. We're like, oh my God, why would he do that?
That guy's just fucking awesome. Honestly, there's a good chance he's just fucking with people though.
Could be.
He's hilarious. My wife likes him for obvious reasons.
Of course.
It's very similar to why, a lot of women love Aquaman. But he was in one of those crappy CW shows. Anyway, but I like he plays D&D and he's a giant nerd. Like it's kind of like I was like super excited to see that Henry Cavill likes to paint Warhammer and build computers and stuff. Like it's just these guys, they're like movie stars and they're all ripped and stuff, but like deep down they're nerds. They love this stuff. That's why they want to do these movies.
Yeah, like deep down they're fans of this shit. They're not just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like to see
that's what I like.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. That is our bulk of news for this week's show. Let's head on over into the Brocat block, which is what Jarrod and I have been doing during our week. Last time you've heard us. So, Jarrod, I know you celebrated a birthday. If you want to share a little bit of that with the Brocat Core or not, you can talk about something else. But I'm kind of curious as to what's been going on since the last time you and I have spoken.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm getting old. I just had my birthday Friday, and let's see. I went shooting with my friend. That was a lot of found. A gun that I want to get, and working on the wife for that one.
How'd you find ammo? Is what I want to know. How'd you find?
Oh no,
ammo?
it's back.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem anymore. The prices are still a little bit higher than they were, but so is everything else. I mean, even like I was looking last night, like you can, if you want to, instead of buying like a full AR rifle, which is one of the other things on my list of things to get, you can get like the lower and the upper part. I think I put one together complete for like $500 online.
Okay.
So, I mean, the prices are coming down on that stuff a bit. It's not going to go down to what it was like pre-pandemic, but like I said, gas is also like $4 a gallon over here in Florida, so nothing's quite going to come back to what it was pre-pandemic. But yeah, no, and then my son stayed at his grandmother's for the weekend, and me and my wife went out to dinner. I got a nice big steak, and yeah, and then I went to a bar, and they were doing karaoke, and I didn't, but it was fun to watch. And yeah, no, it was a great time. It was a very, America birthday for me.
That sounds like a great time that you got to. It also sounds like things that I haven't done in a while, and I'm sure you haven't either, as married men with married dads.
Yeah.
Like karaoke bar and going out to dinner and going
Yeah, no, it was weird.
with friends.
It was nice too, because tax time. So I'm like, I'm gonna get the big steak.
Ooh,
yeah. But no, it was a great time. Highly recommend Texas Roadhouse anytime you're near one. They have the best rolls.
I'm glad you had a lot of fun during your birthday, man. It's always cool to see when people in our circle get to go out and celebrate and do something fun with it. And yours sounds like a blast, man. I haven't planned anything big for my birthday in a couple years, so it's cool to see other people doing it and taking the time and effort to actually go out and celebrate.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even plan it. Really, I found out, because they keep switching the schedule around at work with, how busy it's been and whatnot. But it turned out I was off that day. And, my friend from work actually is the one I went with shooting. And he's like, well, I'm going to go to the range. Like, do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. And, we went, we hung out and, got to talk to a bunch of guys and, it was a good time. And none of it was really planned. Like, and then my wife's like, well, do you want to go to dinner afterwards? I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds good. Went and did that. And it just kind of all came together really nicely, which is my preferred method. Cause every time I do try to plan something like big for my birthday, something goes like horribly wrong and it just never works out. So, apparently not planning things in advance is the way to go.
Apparently. Yeah. The only big event I had over the last week was the UFC fights. Went to Ale House with a couple friends and watched the fights there, and goes to once again remind me that like come 1 o'clock, I'm like, man, I normally I'm asleep 3 hours ago, so I'm feeling it. I'm definitely feeling it. And then also work's been work. I've been getting a lot more hours than I normally get. I think I almost got 40 this week because someone's out of town. Whereas Scott, another co-host on the show here, he got one shift this week, so it continues this weird balance of if I get a lot of hours, he gets none, and if he gets a lot of hours, I get none, and it just continues in that way. Our lives are opposites when it comes to work for some reason, and to this week was no exception with him when I last caught up with him. I did also run this Instagram story. I run these polls almost every day during the week, and I want to know your choice because again, you're a Star Wars fan here, and the options were Obi-Wan or Darth Vader. I figured I'm like, this could be a close poll. Like these are two characters that are pretty popular. One of them apparently has a show coming out on Disney Plus. And I know I talked about this last week, but I got you on the show this week. So what is your choice of a character you like more between these two and why?
All right. Without the show have coming out, because I feel like that could very well change it because they're actually both going to be in it. I would probably go Obi-Wan out of the two. I mean, he's got that like kind of, let's see, like if Qui-Gon, which was his master, is kind of like the father figure, he's got like the older brother kind of mentor thing, which I really enjoy as far as the story goes. But Darth Vader's cool. I just, I feel like that's like I don't know, they're both kind of the cliche option. But out of the two, Obi-Wan, specifically, the prequel Obi-Wan.
Gotcha. Yeah, we saw a lot more of him.
Yeah, which you didn't really like get a whole lot in the original trilogy. It was really cool to kind of see him fleshed out. They were like the best parts of the prequel were his parts.
Right, and then Clone Wars did even more with him. Had another fight with Darth Maul near the end of that one season, which even I heard about and saw on Twitter.
Yeah, but no, he's a very cool character, and he's been very good in like the books, but most people don't pay attention to those. But he's got a lot to him. Vader, I would say less so. One thing I will say is like they're both, especially in the expanded universe, like the comics and stuff like that. Like a lot of people that just watch the movies don't realize quite how powerful those two characters really are.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Obi-Wan for sure.
Got it. It ended up being, I believe Vader ended up edging out a little bit over Obi-Wan, but It seemed like it wasn't a landslide for sure. I think I try to pick the closest options possible just to
Yeah.
annoy people, I guess, because I get some DMs sometimes and they're like, I can't vote. Like one guy, when I put up the 300 and Watchmen movie choices, someone's like, I can't pick one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I think most people's options are going to be how much of the series they've actually seen, like how much of the Star Wars universe are they familiar with.
That makes sense. Yeah, especially with something like Star Wars. I also ran yesterday Pokemon Ruby versus Sapphire, and Sapphire ended up winning on that one, which I was really surprised with because from what I remember, Ruby was the one that outsold Sapphire. I'd have to look that up, but up to a certain generation, every time I picked a Pokemon game, not by deliberate chance, I was just like, okay, I want this one. I ended up picking the least popular one, and it's like, okay, well, whatever. And the one time it almost changed was in X and Y. I picked Y, and everyone picked Y as well because the legendary looked a lot cooler.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, this is the first time that I pre-ordered the more popular version. And then they announced Charizard X, that he was going to be in the X version, and everyone changed their pre-order over to Pokemon X because they wanted that cool Charizard evolution. I'm like, oh, never mind. Pokemon X is the more popular one this time. I put up more polls on Instagram as well. The other thing on Bro Kept Block this week is the Taco Bell nacho fries are back, and they are coming back through April. I know I bring this up. It's a personal part because I love Taco Bell, man. You just brought it up. The nacho fries are awesome. I know Bobby's not a fan of them. Do you like the nacho fries? Have you had them?
Yes, I have had them. I enjoy them. I mean, honestly, anything where you give me like seasoned fries and cheese, like I'm kind of down for. It's one of those things where like my big issue with Taco Bell is I find something I like and then they take it away.
Yep.
I just really want them to stop doing that.
Kelly's still waiting for the Mexican pizza to return. Like, I'll ask her, do you want
My wife
anything?
loved the Mexican pizza.
Yeah, and she's like, is the Mexican pizza back? I'm like, no. She's like, no, I don't want anything then. I'm like, all
That
right.
and was it the Fiesta taco salad?
Yeah, they haven't had that in a while, have they?
Yeah, no, it's been gone. And they're like, well, we have the power menu bowl. I'm like, that's not the same thing at all.
That reminds me of my buddy Riggs when we would go to the theater and he'd be like, do you have Mr. Pibb? We have Dr. Pepper. And he would say, that's not what I asked. And I'm like, Jesus, Riggs.
I don't want that guy with the fancy degree.
I want Mr. Pibb.
Yeah, I'm a common man. I want Mr. Pibb. Like, honestly, though, they are different. It's like, hey, it's like when I go someplace and they're like, I'm like, hey, do you have Coke Zero? And they're like, we have Diet Pepsi. I'm like, that's not the same.
Yeah. Does Pepsi have a Pepsi Zero now or no?
They do, but I'm honestly not a big Pepsi fan.
Okay.
With the exception of Mountain Dew. I love the Mountain Dew products. But yeah, no, Pepsi itself, like, I don't know. It's like if I go to a bar and they have Pepsi, I'm like, I'm leaving.
Gotcha. So not even like, oh, that's good enough. No, you won't have it.
It's not. It doesn't. No, because I prefer like whiskey and Coke, and it doesn't taste the same. It's too sweet.
I see what you're saying. When I used to drink, I would want Coke with my rum or vodka. I wouldn't want Pepsi, and it does taste a lot different. You're right. But when it came to just having the soda, I would prefer Pepsi because that was less sweet for some reason than Coca-Cola when I just drank it as is. But as soon as you add alcohol, it changed it completely. I'm sure it has to do with the chemistry and something of it. You're adding more sugar to it with the alcohol, but yeah, no, I can absolutely see that for sure. But outside of that, I didn't have too much else going on in the week. Nothing overly negative. Today, actually, Kelly and I are going to we have an afternoon off. So I'm going to, another rare one where Leo is at school right now. He's going to get picked up by my parents, and they're going to have him for a couple of hours because they miss him and they want to see him. So Kelly and I are like, what do we do? Like, it's one of those things. Like I did some chores. I started the laundry and all that shit, but it's also like, now we have all this time. Okay, we're excited, and it's like, but where do we go?
Yeah, and what do we do now? No, it's one of the weirdest situations with being a parent. You're like, all right, so I don't have the kid. Okay, so now what?
My life has no meaning.
I mean, basically, but like the entire time, I could think of all these things that like, oh man, I wish I could go do this right now, but I can't bring the child there. And then like, you don't have them. You're like, all right, so what do I do now?
It's like your mind forgets all of the things that you were like, oh, if I could have done this, I could have. And it's just your mind's like, huh, what? I don't know. Do what you want, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like when Liam will spend the weekend with his grandparents or whatever, because her mom loves having him around, and it's great. But I sit there and I go like, if I'm off, like if I'm at work, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not used to seeing him. But if I'm off, I'm like, I wonder how Liam's doing. I wonder if he's behaving. What if
Right.
he's driving grandma crazy?
Yeah, sometimes I feel bad, like, even though they insist, like, "No, we'll watch him," and all that, but, they're still deep down, I know how much work a kid can be, or a baby,
Mhm.
and so I totally get it, and we're incredibly lucky that, there's at least a grandparent that is willing to, like, "No, I love him." Like, I know I've seen some grandparents that are like, "No, I did my time. I don't I don't wanna deal with it
Yeah,
anymore."
no.
So, like, I think we're lucky in that aspect that we didn't get that. I know one guy, one of my friends, he's in his 60s and he's like, I don't want my kids to have kids at any point anytime soon. Like, he's like, he told me the same thing. He's like, I did my time. I'm not ready to watch another baby or a kid. I'm like, all right.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't see that, but I walk around and I'm like, because like we've decided that, like, we're good with the one. I mean, he's going to be 6 this coming week. I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of a gap. But yeah, every once in a while I'll see a baby and I'm like, oh, they're so cute when they're little. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, but they poop a lot and they scream.
Yeah. You forget
And
the nights and the screaming.
exactly. Well, it's kind of like I'm insistent that women forget the pain. Like, they know that it hurt, but they
Mhm.
don't remember the actual pain, because there's no way anybody would want to do that more than once.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a myth or fake news, but I think I'd read somewhere that biologically they do forget or lessen the memory of that a little bit.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think I've read something along that. I've never verified it personally. Um, but yeah, no, it makes sense, because like the way it's described and stuff, like, I mean, I've been kicked in the testicles multiple times. I'm not exactly in a big hurry to have that happen again.
No, not at all. Well, Jarrod, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this episode, especially since it was a little bit of a change in the rotation. You're able to jump on 1 week ahead of your spot, so I do appreciate it. And hopefully you can make it for episode 500. I want to try to get as many of the co-hosts on as possible and just have it be this kind of crazy celebration or whatever, and just kind
Yeah.
of bullshit around. But
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead. Yeah,
it's too
please.
bad, because that would have been my episode.
That's true. I mean,
I could have been like, no, nobody else, just me.
That's very true. And any one of Maceo could have done it. Like, no, I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is
And-
my special time.
We're gonna discuss Halo. Oh, all right.
Yeah, no,
But,
it's always a pleasure. I'm always there to jump in, if I can, schedule permitting and whatnot.
Absolutely. And let them know about Dangerous Tangents, where they can find you, and where they can interact.
Well, it's actually now on, let's see, Spotify, Apple, Google. It's like a proper podcast now. Where I'm working on, there's been some, issues with, back and forth on the production side. So I'm working on getting those resolved, and we should be back out of here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
We have a link on the description of today's episode, but otherwise, what's your Twitter?
It's at Spoon Sandwich, SPOONSAMMICH. And yeah, you can find me there on Twitter, or I'm always in the Discord chat, usually sitting there and asking annoying questions and whatnot. I think I have an Instagram, but I don't really use it, and I'm not on Facebook. So Twitter and Discord are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Oh man, you're so much fun on Discord, because you'll back me up. You know what I'm doing when I go on like Lazy Gaming Guys or on ours, even, of like, I'll just put out a question or something, and then you'll back it up like, no, that's weird, and it starts this whole thing.
Yeah, no, it's fun, especially in the LGG Discord.
Yeah, like that whole my Game Pass thing. Oh my god.
Daniel, you and me are like cocaine and waffles.
You on the other side as well, Brokehead Core member. We really do appreciate it, whether this is your first episode or number 499th. Thank you so much. Be sure to join us next week for our 500th episode. On Patreon, either this or next week, we also have the Jurassic Park retrospective with Julian from Lazy Gaming Guys. So if not on Patreon, join for as little as $1 a month, and you will get that at least 30 days ahead of public release, the Jurassic Park retrospective, to get you ready for Jurassic World Dominion releasing in June. If you want to be heard on the podcast, head on over to speakpipe.com/thereasonsimBroke, and 90 seconds or less, and you can be heard on the show, whether it's a comment or a question. Just send it on in there, and you can do it right from your phone. Just visit the website, says gain access to your mic, and record away, and sends it right over to me. But thank you again for joining us. I've been Daniel, joined by Jarrod and Brokehead Core. All will be well. So aside from the God of War TV series, and we're getting Halo already, is
Mhm.
there another video game property that you would want to see done? Let's assume it's got an unlimited budget and it's got the production that you want, all the filming, whatever it is, a TV show. What video game TV show do you want to see happen?
All right, this is gonna be a weird one, but there's a strategy game called Crusader Kings.
That is a weird one.
Yeah, but basically it's just a history show, but it would be like an alternate history because the idea in the game is you control like a house, and you have to like get married and have a kid and continue your lineage and try to take over more land and stuff. So yeah, no, I would like to see something like that.
I just looked it up. It's on Xbox Series X and Windows.
Yep,
And
it's
Linux,
there.
and I think you just really want a proper history show.
Right, but I want it to be weird history.
Weird history.
Yeah, I don't want it to be actually historically accurate, but like a show where like there's actual historical people, but like some weird guy from a small county in Ireland ends up taking over the Holy Roman Empire.
So okay, so it's perfect for the History Channel, is what you're saying. Current
Exactly,
History Channel.
it'd be perfect. Come on, get in there.